All right, everybody, this is episode 42 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, CH. We have a special guest today on this Saturday afternoon, TheCryptoCPA. How you doing today, man?
Hey, what's up, man? Doing good. How are you?
Hanging in there. It's been 2 or 3 weeks actually since we've dropped an episode of the podcast. I had travel for work. Shit was crazy, but luckily nothing was really going on with Bitcoin, and it was a good chance to let the news and all of the shit that's been going on kind of pile up, so we have a bunch of topics to rip through over the next couple of weeks. But I saw something interesting the other day, and I thought it was worthwhile to just do a quick episode on of somebody who actually that I had never heard of before, Michelle Phan. And the topic for this episode is spreading the Bitcoin virus with content creation. So I saw a bunch of Bitcoiners talking about this article that came out about Michelle Phan, who apparently is a YouTube legend that I just had never heard of. And she is the, I guess, mother of tutorials on YouTube. And that is a huge niche industry, even just for video. And she disappeared from YouTube, I think in 2015. So she had a great 10-year run, created a bunch of different makeup and cosmetic businesses, sold them, made a shitload of money. And it looks like she is a Bitcoiner now, which is pretty dope. And so I went and I read the recent article that she was quoted in, and watched a couple of clips of her, and it seems like she really gets Bitcoin, which is awesome to see. And it's great to see it from somebody who has millions of followers and over 1 billion views on YouTube, which is insane. So I'm going to play this quick 2-minute clip here, and then we'll jump into this topic of how the Bitcoin virus spreads and what role content creators have in a Bitcoin future.
If I were to give an elevator pitch, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the true money, the truest money that we should have had since the beginning of time. And just to give some, just to make this easier to digest, why was gold always considered the standard for money, even during like the ancient days in Egypt, Mesopotamia? Why was it always gold? Because gold, one, it's finite. So the fact that you can't find it everywhere, two, out of all the precious metals, it is the most stable metal. And three, it's hard. Like, it takes a lot of energy to mine gold. Like, you can figure out, you can even have scanners and scan for gold, but to pay for the labor, to pay for the cost of like the digging and all the people feeding them, and just to get a little bit, that's why it's so expensive, because it takes a lot of energy to mine gold, and it's finite. So now bringing it to Bitcoin operates in the same way. Bitcoin is like digital gold, but it's different. It's not gold, because gold, you can carry it, right, tangible, but Bitcoin, it's digital. But the fact that it's a scarce digital asset is what makes it so unique.
How is it scarce?
There's only 21 million coins in existence. That's it. There's never going to be more coins. It's not like our money. The banks can just print more money, right, if they want to. And they do it without our permission.
Can they not make more Bitcoin?
You can't. It is impossible. That is it. There's only 21 million units. And Bitcoin has, the white paper started in 2008. Satoshi created this white paper, and no one even knows who Satoshi is. It was an anonymous person who came up with this thesis. What is Bitcoin? It's essentially a currency that's not built on trust. Because if you look at the back of your dollar, it says, "In God we trust," telling us, trust in this dollar. It's money.
All right, so that's a lot to unpack there. Definitely a long 2 minutes of her giving an awesome elevator pitch about Bitcoin. So, to summarize, she talks about the similarities between gold and how gold was used as money for thousands of years. She talks about how gold is relatively scarce and rare, and that it's hard money. And she also talks about proof of work there, how it's expensive and difficult to mine. And, we'll talk more about that on an episode about stock to flow. And she also hits on probably the most important piece of Bitcoin, that it is limited in amount and a fixed supply. Only 21 million coins to go around. And she really emphasized that there can never be more than 21 million, which is the ultimate Bitcoin shelling point. And I like that she said that Bitcoin is true money, and it's the truest money that we should have had since the beginning of time. It seems like she's definitely taken a pretty deep dive down the Bitcoin rabbit hole when you're making a pretty strong pitch like that. So one more quote from the article that she was in, and we can jump into these questions. She said, "I'm actually more excited about Bitcoin than I was when I first discovered YouTube." So my question to you is, do you think it's a coincidence that Michelle was early on YouTube and Bitcoin?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. My had some technical issues over here. But yeah, I think it's a really good question, because if you think about what YouTube started out as before Google bought it and before it became what it is today, it was really known, and it sort of is still known as that decentralized place for you to spread your videos, your ideas. And she got into that. I don't think a lot of people saw that when YouTube first came out. They thought it was all cat videos and memes. But she really understood what YouTube had the potential to be, and she spread her tutorials and kind of started that being able to monetize on YouTube. And I think that being able to take that on your own and not having a media company kind of promote you and you do everything on your own, it's kind of the same idea with Bitcoin, having that decentralized position within your own monetary system. So I think it's pretty clear that she understands the digital age, and I don't think it's a coincidence that she's so early within Bitcoin, and how she was so early within YouTube also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's you can see that she definitely recognized YouTube as a publishing platform, and she took full advantage of that and realized, you don't need anybody pumping your content, I guess, to make a big splash. And I feel like that's something Gary Vee always talks about. Like, if your content is good, it's going to spread no matter what. And obviously she crushed it. And I think that really leads into the next question of, to me, the Bitcoin virus, it spreads really by word of mouth and and content creators, I guess you could say. Pretty much anybody who isn't necessarily mainstream. So maybe in my standpoint, right? I had a friend and a coworker get me into the cryptocurrency space at first, and I know that you and I had talked about it in 2013 when you remember first hearing about it, and I probably kicked myself for not taking a deeper dive then. But that's a whole different story. But I feel like it's a combination of the price, the Bitcoin price, bull markets. People always say that they're, that popular meme of the guy with like the gold chain around his neck, and he says like, "I'm in it for the technology," which is that's kind of like it's a funny bullshit meme that everybody's really in this to make money, so that price really drives adoption. But I think there's something to be said about people like Michelle Phan and other bigger content creators like a Joe Rogan, who just gets millions of views on all of these 3-hour long podcasts that he does, and he's talked about Bitcoin quite a bit. So how do you think content creators will help spread Bitcoin adoption?
Yeah, I think influencers have a huge market to spread the Bitcoin adoption and really understanding what Bitcoin is. And it sounds like she really understands it, which I don't think a lot of people do right now. Even a lot of the people like Mayweather you saw was getting into ICOs and kind of promoting those. So it's good to see that people are getting more knowledgeable about it and spreading the actual facts about it instead of just trying to pump their bags. So I think and I think this is a new trend that we're seeing. A lot of people are getting more informative. You can see on the news, people are actually starting to talk about stock to flow, and these are big changes within the Bitcoin community that I think people are starting to understand that there is value within the Bitcoin and not just pumping ICOs and just getting all these altcoins out. So I think there's going to be a huge potential for all of these influencers too. As you said, like Joe Rogan, every time he talks about it, I just heard him talking about. He was talking about quantum computing in his one of his episodes and how that impacts Bitcoin. So there's a lot of good conversation happening within the mainstream market now.
Yeah, and I like that I guess Joe Rogan would be considered somewhat mainstream right now, but it's kind of that alternative content creators, right? People are looking to different avenues, different platforms to get their news, entertainment, ideas, and information. You don't have to wait for CNN or CNBC or one of these other mainstream outlets to talk about Bitcoin anymore for it to spread. You have it. You see it on meme pages. You see it on different Medium articles. You see now, you have people like Raoul Paul, who we've been, a big fan of, the guy over from Real Vision, Dan Tapiero. They've been having some pretty in-depth discussions about Bitcoin and the space, and you can see it, starting to spread. So when you have somebody like Raul or Dan Tapiero taking Bitcoin seriously, all of a sudden you have an entire, let's say their friends, right? Rich hedge fund guys, billionaires who have for the past 10 years pretty much laughed at Bitcoin. And now you see that tide kind of start turning a little bit. And they're thinking very deeply about the implications of what Bitcoin means to them from a global macro standpoint. And someone like Michelle Phan, in that clip that we played, I mean, she totally gets it. She mentions the banks, how they can print money at will. That's not something that you would expect a makeup tutorial person to even be talking about. Why would they even care about whether or not central banks are printing money? And I do find it very interesting. And I brought up another tweet here from Beautyon, who's one of my favorite Bitcoiners, and he just in big bold letters like, "This is how normalization is done." So, and this quote that she has is, "Bitcoin, it's probably the most important investment you can ever make in your life." And that's a pretty bold statement from YouTube's biggest beauty star. What do you think about that?
Yeah, personally, I mean, it's for me, it's been the most important investment, and not just in terms of owning Bitcoin, but in terms of knowledge. Once you start owning Bitcoin, and then you have to hold your private keys, you start going down that Bitcoin rabbit hole. And if you just think about not just the investments you made and what kind of value you're holding, just the knowledge of the banking system, the Federal Reserve, and all of that, that has so much value. And it's an investment that is going to keep on building, and you're going to make smarter choices in the future. You lower your time preference, or you raise your time preference, and that just has a lot of value for your life, and not just in terms of your portfolio.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, for me personally, it's been the biggest investment, or the most important investment I've ever made, because as you and I talk about all the time, why didn't we learn anything about Austrian economics in high school or college? Where was all of this information when I feel like we needed it most? And it's kind of funny that Bitcoin number go up all of a sudden brings a priority to reading the Bitcoin Standard and looking for and reading Human Action or any of these other seminal works from some of the great Austrians that I had literally never heard of until 2018. And I had tweeted to Safety, like, all of a sudden studying Austrian economics is now profitable because it it strengthens your investment theses as to why you should accumulate Bitcoin and stack more sats and lower that time preference and skip going out to, or what I like to say, pack your lunch. You know, all of a sudden this year I've been packing my lunch every goddamn day so I can save the extra $10 so I can stack a few more sats during the week. But it really does change your entire mindset. And I like that she kind of focused on entrepreneurs here, because I think that's something you and I talk about a lot, right? What does entrepreneurship look like in a world where either Bitcoin is money, or there's a, as Raoul Pal likes to say, there's a parallel financial system being built where you have, you know, the legacy system and then you have the Bitcoin economy. And how do they both work hand in hand together, and how do either past entrepreneurs transition into that new Bitcoin economy, or how do people like you and I, right? We've always been talking about entrepreneurship for the last 10 years, I feel like, or longer than that actually. And it seems like we're both really interested in what Bitcoin entrepreneurship looks like. And pretty much I'm starting to come to the conclusion like everything's going to need to be rebuilt in one way or another, whether it's insurance, whether it's financial services. I mean, you're a CPA, right? Like there's a whole new market out there for just Bitcoin related accounting that is barely even starting, right? So there's a lot of, it's just all white space in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. There's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of infrastructure changes that's going to be needed, and that's going to bring up a whole new type of businesses, services, consulting businesses. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And even if you just think about how YouTube started, no one really imagined. Maybe some people imagined, but the majority of people didn't imagine being able to start a full-time business just recording videos on YouTube. So there's going to be different opportunities for that we can't even think of right now that people are probably working on that's really going to change how people interact and communicate with each other using the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, I mean, you really nailed it. I mean, I think the biggest thing about Bitcoin, that iPhone moment, it doesn't exist yet. Like we can't even think of what it might be. Just like nobody could have predicted that you could be a YouTube sensation making, you know, $50,000 a month, making whatever videos about the most niche topic on the planet. Maybe, you know, making coffee or putting images of, you know, whatever as a barista, you know, like bears and shit on your froth. Like you can monetize in the craziest ways. And, you know, since, you know, the crypto humor page and Orange Coin memes and the Beef and Bitcoin podcast, that's content creation surrounded around the Bitcoin space. But, you know, that's kind of my next question to you is what role do you think content creators have just in, how does Bitcoin actually change the role of the content creator from a monetization standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about content creators now, it's a worldwide market. On YouTube, on Instagram, you're communicating with people all across the world. So it just makes sense that when you're communicating ideas, pictures, videos across the world, being able to share a monetary medium of exchange, it seems like really logical. So I think it's going to go hand in hand on how people kind of share their ideas, how we can, things like Patreon, how to tip people and donate to people's pages. All of that's really going to change and make it a more worldwide economy, I think, within the influencer economy. I think that's a huge space, especially as everyone is starting to have a cell phone. So everyone's going digital. So I think that's going to be a huge space for the Bitcoin economy.
No, yeah, you made a really good point there. I think I've heard Bitcoin Tina mention numerous times. Bitcoin is an exponential technology that's built on top of exponential technologies. So you have, the internet, which has been around for a long time, and it took, 30 or 40 years to really hit that tipping point where it started to take off. And then you have mobile on top of the internet. And now you have entire countries who, leapfrogged basically like poles and wires and telephone poles and all this stuff. They just leapfrogged right over it to mobile. They went right over that. So you have mobile phones growing at an increasing rate. Then you have, I hate the term fintech, but you have that financialization tech, things like Venmo and the Cash App. And now you have the Cash App that offers Bitcoin purchases, which is huge, at least for anybody who has access to the Cash App. All of these exponential technologies building on top of each other, and then you have this influencer market that has grown substantially because it's just a great way to advertise now. You're getting very concentrated eyeballs on one particular niche. So for, let's say, a Bitcoin related Twitter page, Instagram page, or YouTube channel, that all of those views that are watching that are very interested and focused on Bitcoin. So if you have a Bitcoin related product and you want to advertise, you're going to get so much more bang for your buck advertising with that particular content creator or influencer rather than running an ad on the radio or television or anything else for that matter. It just almost doesn't even make sense to do that. And I think that's, you made a good point with, Bitcoin being global. And since Bitcoin scales socially on a global standpoint, you can have customers all across the globe now. And if you're offering a product, whether it be a digital product or something else for, a couple thousand sats, the distance between you and your customer isn't really an issue. And now the financial rails aren't an issue. You don't need to pay any additional fees or to buy a product from a different country. You just it's like sending an email now. It's literally that simple.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a good topic, though. Is there anything else you wanted to add on to this?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. I was actually listening to her full video, and she talked about how when she was doing YouTube, she got sponsored by L'Oreal, and they started forcing her to do types of content, and I think they made some type of product with her brand on it, and it didn't turn out to be good, and she got a lot of hate, and she kind of started getting controlled. And I think that's what shows like what YouTube really became. It started off being this decentralized, being able to create your own content, and now as more and more corporations are getting into it, it's starting to get more controlled, and they're starting to control their content producers. And I think that's going to be really different with Bitcoin being a decentralized network. You're not going to be able to have this type of control that YouTube really got when it got bought by Google. So I thought it was just an interesting point you made.
Yeah, no, I do remember her saying that, and it's a shame, really. But I think the good part is that you have more content creators now who can choose to monetize on their own. And have their own products that they sell or push or whatever, and that's much better than the centralization and just the co-opting of what made YouTube very cool. And I think the same thing happened with Facebook as well. People are leaving Facebook every day to get off of that. The younger generations really don't care about Facebook at all. And it's really looking to where those next platforms are going to be, and where does Bitcoin fit into those, if it does at all. I'd have a feeling that it does, but I think that's a good point, that the the Bitcoin network itself being able to spread into the absolute corners of the internet, wherever that may be, will really make for interesting times ahead for sure.
Right. Yep.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. So that's our take pretty much on spreading the Bitcoin virus. What role do content creators and influencers play in that? Awesome to see Michelle Phan jumping in with both feet into the Bitcoin bandwagon. It'll be very cool to see. And I even checked out her Instagram page, and she has a whole section of stories of her just talking about Bitcoin and friends texting her and her telling them to get some sats and all this stuff. So it's really cool to see, I guess, someone of her caliber to really jump in and hang in the Bitcoin trenches, taking grenades from mainstream, just keep on shilling.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome to see that.
All right, thank you to the Crypto CPA for being a guest host of the podcast today. Awesome to have him, and we will definitely be having him back on. That was episode 42 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, shoot us a DM, leave us a comment anytime, let us know what topics you want us to talk about, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Thanks for having me.